downtown or around the square at the time President Kennedy was killed. What were some of the businesses downtown at that time?
Gosh, I can't remember that.
Okay.
I worked for John Willie Beard down there at the oil jobber where the historical museum is now.
Where the historical museum is now.
There was a Phillips jobber, and then there was a Texaco jobber. Mr. Walters, Ray Walters, had the Texaco.
Uh-huh.
And we had John Willie had the Phillips 66. And then that warehouse was there.
Okay.
Used to have commodities. The commodities came in for the schools there.
Right.
The school buses came from different counties up to get their commodities.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you remember the day that Lamar Creamery caught on fire?
Kind of. We used to sell diesel to Lamar Creamery and gasoline.
Oh, you did?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And then when they had the fire, they moved to Sulphur Spring.
Mm-hmm.
And John Willie worked for Morris Kimball for years, and then he bought that jobber ship. He and Leslie Eccles and Thomas Eccles. And
Leslie Eccles and Thomas Eccles. Yeah.
Hal Rudersell and James Rudersell. They all went together and bought that jobber ship. And John Willie was the manager.
And of course, you probably remember that attorney Leighton Cornett also.
Yes.
Uh-huh.
And they built 5 or 6 new service stations here in town.
Uh-huh.
Went on 19th and Bonham.
And that's back when they were full service stations where they'd come out and wash your window and everything.
Robert Hindman had that one. They built one on Lamar Avenue, one on Clarkson Street, one on North Main that Betty Morgan had, and then they built one out there. It was by the Holiday Inn at the time, and Otis Wagner had that.
Well, remember when Holiday Inn and Ramada Inn used to have buffets on Sunday? And
yes, I was president of the BNPW Club, and we ate out there. We had our meetings, and they had beautiful buffets for us.
do you remember when Eugenia Valuer worked at the Nicholson House?
Who?
Eugenia Valuer. You may or may not have known Eugenia, but this was at that time. She was there at the, when President Kennedy was killed, she was working there at the Nicholson House.
Really?
Yes, and somebody came in and told her about it having happened.
Well, around on Kaufman Street, next door to where that historical museum is now, there used to be a little cafe.
Yes.
Called Derek's Cafe.
Derek's Cafe.
And we'd go up there and drink coffee sometime. John Willie and them would go to the Nicholson House or different places. He'd meet up with, businessmen and have coffee.
Remember that little Tropic Cafe that used to be downtown there?
Yes, I used to eat in there.
It used to be right next to the barber shop.
And there used to be a cafeteria down there behind Margaret's Drugstore. They had one.
That was Dalton's cafeteria.
Yes, sure was.
Dalton Sprinkle.
When I came back from I went on my lunch hour to the beauty shop, and that's when Kennedy was killed.
Yes.
And I came back to work, and of course everyone was there listening
Yes.
to it. I think there was a man that worked for Phillips Petroleum Company that lived here in Paris. He had a territory that he covered. His name was Bill Truitt.
Bill Truitt?
Mm-hmm. And he was from Florida. He's buried in Florida. And later on, he had a little boy the same age as my oldest son that had leukemia.
Oh.
And the little boy would call me and talk to me and want me to bring Donald to play with him. It was hard to talk to that little boy.
Oh my goodness.
And Bill broke down sometimes and cried, down at the Louisville line. They couldn't do anything for leukemia then.
Well, do you remember Rucker's Dairyette across from St. Joseph Hospital?
I ate lunch with that lady one time.
You did? Mrs. Rucker?
I never, well, I don't know what, I don't know it. Anyway, I never ever wanted to go eat out. Didn't like to eat by myself. So
right.
I mustered up the courage to go in Furs one day and eat.
Uh-huh.
Got in line, got my tray, and went right around to the first booth and sat down. And I hadn't been there long, and this lady walked up and she said, "Do you mind if I eat with you? I hate to eat alone."
Oh, how neat.
I
That's
said,
sweet.
"No, I don't mind. I hate to eat alone too."
That's great. That's
got a pet here.
nice.
She went talking to me. We talked about Ruckers.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember if it was her, but they had a Dairy Queen at Honey Grove.
Uh-huh.
And she sat there and told me about her husband going down one Sunday morning to do some work.
Yeah.
and he didn't come back, and she got worried about him. So their son went down there, and he had got electrocuted, and he was laying on the floor dead.
Oh, I heard about that when it happened.
Did you?
Yeah, that was sad.
Anyway, so we had dinner together.
Well, do you remember the truck stop that used to be out there on the loop?
Absolutely. Cotton McDowell.
Uh-huh.
And we rented a home from him, and he got my first car from me. He and John Willie. John Willie signed the note, and Cotton had a used car lot, and he brought the car from Kansas or somewhere just for me. His little blue Chevrolet.
Oh, that's great.
And
Now, see, my dad bought a lot of cars from Harry Lawler out on North Main. Do you remember him? Yeah.
And Cotton would call and say, Miss Martha. He'd ask me something. He always said, Miss Martha. And so he didn't. Sometimes John Willie would go out there and talk to him, and then he'd call me to be sure he didn't tell him the story.
And for anyone that watches this, your name is
Martha Evans.
Okay, Martha. Thank you. I know you have a lot of stories you can tell, and if you'd like, we can do this every so often.
I believe John McManus may have been driving the bobtail truck. Maybe Truman Garrison. Truman was driving that bobtail truck until he had a wreck and killed his wife and grandson. And then John McManus had the Gulf station on 7th and Vaughan, came down and drove the bobtail truck.
I
Delivered
see.
gasoline out to little country stations.
Oh, I see. Well,
I never worked in my life. I couldn't drive. I didn't know how to answer the telephone.
well, let me ask you this: do you remember the day of the Paris tornado?
Absolutely, I saw it.
Oh, wow. Well, tell me about that.
I've got some pictures of it too.
Oh, okay.
I was working at it used to be the Social Security office.
Right.
I was working at the Department of Human Services, and it was on 12th in the Crowley building.
Uh-huh.
And I worked in personnel then.
Right.
And one of the ladies and I had gone on break, and we were coming back up Clarksville Street back to the office. We met this van-like truck, and it was saying, "Take cover, there's a tornado." And I said, "She said there was a tornado?" The sun was shining. It was beautiful. She said, "Yeah." So we got back to the office, and there was a man from Silver Springs in there.
Uh-huh.
He was the supervisor over there at DHS. And he wanted us to get in his car, and he's going to outrun the tornado. We said no, so we all got a cushion out of our chair and went into one of the offices.
Uh-huh.
And we decided we didn't want to stay in there because the lights went out. So we walked out on the porch, and there was two tornadoes. One come across the top of St. Joseph Hospital, picked a bunch of debris and stuff, and then it joined in with that one that had come north.
Uh-huh.
And it started pouring down rain. Raining hard. And some man was walking along the street, and he got under that cover over there at that little restaurant across from the bank and stood there till it quit raining.
Wow.
And both of my children were working.
Wow.
The youngest one worked over at Sears part-time.
Uh-huh.
And I kept standing out there, and there was the Salvation Army collection box there on the parking lot. And that tornado picked it up and carried it across. And then a little bit, this Sears delivery truck pulled up. And my son got out, stood on the running board, and waved like this at me.
Yeah.
And I waved back at him. So he was okay.
Oh, that's good.
And my other son worked at, it was Miracle then.
Miracle.
Across from that place that had that glass beads or something.
Right.
And he never runs. He's heavy and he walked everywhere. But he told me he ran and got down in one of them things where they back the trailers.
Right.
And it went right across there. Picked those beads up.
Wow. Wow.
When we got home that night, my youngest son told me they were over in West Paris, and it picked their truck up.
Wow.
And they had to get out of the truck and got in a ditch, and the sand was hitting them real hard.
Wow.
That night, there were people on the radio that couldn't locate their relatives or friends. My phone would work, and I could call people and then call these people back and tell them where their friends were and they were okay, but they couldn't call their friends. The phones were messed up some way.
Wow.
When we were going home that day, the sky was red and all these emergency vehicles were coming from Dallas. I live on the highway going towards Skipper.
Yeah.
There were just constant emergency vehicles.
Highway 1924, yes. Wow. You never will forget that day.
Of course not. And a lady that I worked with down, I used to manage that Sun grocery store that one called Provine in North Main.
Provine in North Main.
And I worked for Sun Oil Company. They owned it.
Sun Oil Company.
And a lady that had worked for me there ran out of her house, Helen McQueen, and got killed.
Oh,
hit by
goodness.
debris. she got killed.
Oh goodness, she was one of the people that died that day in the Paris tornado, April 1982. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.